everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beneath the Waters. I have a very interesting guest with me today, Pastor Hildebrandt from the Church of God in Aylmer, Ontario. And he's going to speak with us today about his perspective about what's been going on with the whole coronavirus shutdown, and his perspective on the current lockdowns over the last few months. So welcome to the show, Pastor Hildebrandt. Happy to have you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for having me.
So Pastor Hildebrandt, why do you think that the government has not declared church an essential service? You can go into a large grocery store like Costco or Walmart, or you can even go in the liquor store or restaurants and stand 6 feet apart. So what makes churches different?
So I have, of course, given this a lot of serious thought because it affects us so tremendously. And not just us, not just me or just our church, but nationwide, worldwide. I feel very, very troubled by it. Why would churches not be essential? So I would say that in one way, looking at it in one way, I feel like that the churches should have in the past years been more active so that no one would have a doubt whether or not churches should be essential. I feel like since this came up, I feel like that the government, especially here in Canada, does recognize more now than they did in the spring that churches are essential because of the response that they have gotten. So, which I'm very, very thankful for, that when these measures are being passed down now, that it seems like now they are considering, okay, we will not, mind you, there is limits on there and whatnot, but they are not proceeding to close the churches down. I think that there is an awakening in their mind that maybe churches are more essential than they thought.
Okay, great. So having said that, are there other churches that you're aware of that are opening their doors?
I believe that they are opening. There's other churches that are doing it. Of course, they are very afraid of opening up, not knowing, because there's not really good clearance given. I mean, the lockdown measures are placed on everybody with the social distancing, with the masks and whatnot. I think they are trying to open up and are opening up, but they are afraid what the consequences might be, or if the police shows up, they don't know, are we within our allowance or not? So it's definitely a real stumbling block here, or there's it's a big hindrance because they don't know if they really can be open now.
Right. Okay. So there's some fear for the churches themselves about opening up, following the regulations as they're meant to. Okay. So that kind of leads me to, I'm kind of wondering, does the Johnson Amendment have anything to do with what you're saying, Pastor Hildebrandt? Like, are there some churches that are afraid to open up, not just for the coronavirus, but maybe for their own political views and things like that?
Of course, as you know, basically across the nation, people are very, very divided about this whole thing.
Yes.
Very divided. Unfortunately, very, very divided. Some people believe that the state should not be involved at all. The churches should be left alone. I mean, our charter on the very top of it, it says that Canada is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God, and we could say I would say our freedoms that we are enjoying in Canada and the Western countries, the Western world, basically came by the Christians fighting for those freedoms there. We call them God-given freedoms because that's what they are. So, but there's people feel very, very different about it. Some people think that churches just every measure that is given has to be followed to the T because the government says so. Whereas others feel like, no, it should be challenged because it's God-given freedoms that the government should not touch.
Right, yes. And I know that at one of your demonstrations that you did in Toronto, Ontario, around protesting about religious freedoms, that you did mention a couple of verses from Matthew one about obeying government and the other one about obeying God. Can you speak a little bit to that?
So generally speaking, obviously, as Christians, we would believe that, as Romans 13 says, that we should obey the government. But I truly believe, and many people would be with me on that, is that there's more to it than just saying that Romans 13 says you ought to obey the government. For example, there's a book that comes just before Romans, which is the book of Acts, and it clearly states the apostles are saying man must obey God rather than man.
Right.
So by that, we know that, yes, we should obey the government, but as soon as it interferes with the word of God, with the Bible, then we would choose the Bible, and then we would not obey. Christianity throughout history is known for, if you will, for rebelling against governments or resisting governments only because they felt that it was against God what they were asked to do.
Right, right, right. Okay. So, Pastor Hildebrandt, you're speaking out a lot about what's happening right now. And that is just such a great thing, because I wouldn't imagine that there's any time in history when we need pastors to be speaking out about what's happening. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on, where pastors are today? Because it seems like the church, other than yourself, has been very quiet during this time and hasn't been speaking out. And I know there's a lot of people that wonder why that's the case. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Of course, that's very, very troubling. I feel no hatred in me or no bitterness against anyone. I want to make that sure, not at all. And I understand that many of them are very afraid. I'm not. I'm just not afraid, because I know that this is our time, and if the people ever needed us, it's now. How could I fail them when they needed me most? So what really hurts me is when the people, we could say the sheep, come to me and they say, could you speak to my pastor and convince him to do something? And I know they are in a tight spot and they try to please everybody, and they have parishioners that are for or against these lockdown measures that are being passed down. It's hard, but I have, by the grace of God, I have led the congregation here in Aylmer. I have been a strong leader for them, and they were not surprised. They were not surprised at all when I took this stand and said, we're not backing down from this. We're not. They were not surprised. They expected me to do that, and were, of course, thrilled and are so glad that I am doing what I'm doing. And I am in contact with some of the pastors, and they're saying, okay, how do you do this? What can we do? But when I sense the fear in them, when I sense the uncertainty in their minds, then I understand why they don't want to do it, because
Right.
if you fear what is happening, it's going to be very difficult for you to take a stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you think that, in your experience, do you feel like Canada is a little bit less God-oriented than, let's say, some patriotic states like the United States, for example, where they, put God as part of their patriotism of their own country? Do you find that Canada is any less God-oriented or centered in their way of thinking?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, but I would have thought over the past years that Canada is never as, let me put it like this, never as church oriented as much as the United States is. They are very much on that religious freedom. Yes, we have it in Canada and it's in the charter, thank God. But I feel like it never came to a test like it does now. Whereas in the United States, much more often, as you see in the Supreme Court, the things that reach the Supreme Court there, you see that they are putting a lot more weight on it. And I'm glad. I feel like this is for Canada an awakening right now. And for that part, I must say I am very impressed that so many people are stepping up. When they heard the sentence, church is not essential, or when churches were treated as that they were not essential, that
Yeah.
was a big, big thing. And people have stepped up. Many, many, many people have stepped up. Mind you, Al, the thing is here that it's not just the religious people that are stepping up, and all of a sudden I find myself with, it could even be an atheist person that doesn't believe in God at all. He speaks the same language as I do. He says, Pastor, I'm so glad you're standing up, because he said my freedom is taken away from me as well. And I said, I don't know if you heard me say this in Toronto, but freedom taken away from one of us is taking freedom away from all of us. So really, it's the human family speaking up now and saying, no, you're taking our freedoms, and that's not right. So I feel like this is a spiritual awakening that is happening in Canada right now, where when this comes back to, I don't know if it'll come back to normal, but when it comes back to where it's supposed to be, people will be a lot more either passionate about church, or they will drop it.
Right, exactly. You know, I couldn't agree with you more. I was interested in your answer about that, because there's never been more discussion that I've heard during this time about people's relationship with God, whether they're attending a church or not attending a church. You know, kind of face their own mortality has been threatened in a way, their freedoms have been threatened in a way. And it has been a spiritual awakening. I absolutely agree with you, and a much needed spiritual awakening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
God help us.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So I commend you so much for speaking out and not being afraid, and going out and rallying for our freedoms and rallying for our relationship with Spirit and with God. And I know that you have done a couple of demonstrations in Toronto, Canada here, and you've been speaking out passionately about your thoughts about what's happening right now. And we're just going to take a quick look at that.
In this time of fear-mongering, we don't need less prayer. We don't need less church. We need more of it. I said, you got those liquor stores open. You got those Tim Hortons open. Listen now, you want a church? You want to close the church? Absolutely not. They said, Pastor, shouldn't you be doing what Romans 13 says and obey the government? I said, I'll do it like Peter and John. They told them, don't go back to the temple. And the angel of God during the night told them, go right back where you were. We established one thing in April, and that was church is essential. The government grants us rights, certain rights, but it is God who gives us our freedoms. They cannot be removed by law, decree, or emergency orders. Napoleon said, the world suffers a lot, not because of the violence of the bad people, but because of the silence of the good people.
So, Pastor Hildebrandt, what are your thoughts on masks? Because I know that you've already shared that you believe that what's happening is more oppression of freedom than it is about the virus. And you know, you're a pastor, so I'm guessing you're a very compassionate person. I consider myself a very compassionate person, and obviously it would not be a problem to do whatever was necessary to keep people safe if it was in line with the statistics of what's really going on. And clearly the statistics are very different than, let's say, the strategies that are being implemented in the lockdown with masks and washing hands. And I mean, it's always good to wash your hands anytime for viruses, but the rate of people getting sick and dying from the virus doesn't seem to match what's being asked of us in terms of isolating and closing down the economy and all the things that are going on. So what are your thoughts about the mask? Because, you know, the mask is something, it's obviously a very, very prolific topic that people talk about a lot today, and you're a masker or you're a non-masker, more division, which we don't need. What are your thoughts? Because I know for myself, I really feel like masks are an initiation into satanic ideology myself. And I don't wear it for that reason. I would gladly wear a mask if I thought people were, you really becoming sick around me, or I thought I was putting someone in danger. I've been also someone who's been aware of the New World Order agenda that's been kind of on the horizon for a while, and we are in 2020. I really feel like a lot of the mask is, covering your divinity. It's the 6 feet apart, the washing the hands, the isolating. A lot of it is very similar to satanic practices. So I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on mask wearing.
Of course, as you know, it's been a real hot topic, and I regret to see what I see, how it divides people, and people that were friends for 30 years, all of a sudden they're enemies only because somebody is not convinced that they should be wearing the mask. To me, that's a clear sign that something is very wrong with it, because look what it causes. But the thing is, so let's go back in March, April, when this all started. So why did our top doctors, whether it was the United States, Dr. Fauci, or whether it was Dr. Tam in Canada, why did they explicitly say, why did they say that Dr. Fauci, for example, he said there's no need for us to walk around with a mask. Dr. Tam said similar things. And we all know that science doesn't change in a couple of months. So it's obvious. And then the WHO, World Health Organization, confirms that we shouldn't put so much weight on it, that it produces false security, and on and on and on. My opinion of the mask is not because of what Pastor Hildebrandt thinks. My opinion is based on what I've read, based on what doctors say, based on what the mask, those that produce the mask, those that make the mask, those that check the virus. I thought it was well said when someone said, the mask right now to keep the virus out would be the same as we have a chain link fence to keep the mosquitoes out.
Yes.
It doesn't even come close, not even close. So I used to wear a mask. I used to work in a factory, and I dealt with silica sand. So for years and years, I worked in a factory. I always wore a mask when I dealt with silica sand because of the dust, right? And I'm so glad I did, because it served that purpose, because those dust particles were not smaller. They made sure that the mask was thicker, or it kept the dust particles out. But this does not do it. And it produces such animosity. It produces such, it takes the friendship away. It ruins our relationship. And we cannot see somebody smile, because as human beings, that's how we express ourselves, by our facial expressions, and that's how we communicate. If you take that away, you approach me with a mask. I don't know if you're mad at me. I don't know if you are laughing. I don't know if I can't see your teeth. And let's not forget, we are not breathing properly. We are the oxygen intake and keeping our what we're exhaling, keeping that in the mask. It cannot be good for us. And then what really did it for me, where I just could not stand it, is when it went beyond that and we forced it on our children. And I said to different ones, I said, if I had done this, especially as a pastor, if I had put masks on just a year ago, I would be behind bars right now, because I would be called an abusive pastor. And that hasn't changed in my mind. If you force that on children and they cannot communicate and they cannot laugh and they cannot, and then to actually go as far as say, even when you sneeze, you got to keep the mask on, just sneeze into your elbow. It is child abuse, and I stand on that firmly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I mean, in what world would we ever have done that if there wasn't this programming around this virus being, lurking around every corner? It's so detrimental to our children's development, their mental health, and their sense of well-being. I mean, what are they being programmed to be like going forward? Not being able to talk to their friends, and as you say, the breathing like this, there's several doctors that have actually come out and talked about the harms of masks. And it seems that because the news and the media seem to have that forefront, continuously directing people towards the WHO, towards the CDC, towards Dr. Tam, but people that are really entrenched in that, they're not not sort of getting a different perspective. There's been many, many doctors that have come out and said that masks of this type are not for the public. We're not trained to wear them. We're touching them. We're causing other harms to ourselves. We're probably causing, I don't know because I'm not a doctor, but, breathing issues. It makes sense that there would be moisture and maybe even fungus after a while if you're breathing it for too long. But many doctors have come out and said that the mask does very little, and that washing your hands and keeping your distance, if the virus is actually around, is the best measure. So it's not that we're not getting that information. It seems like there's so much programming that's been happening that until people turn off the TV or turn off the media and kind of look for themselves and listen to some different points of view, we're really divided, as you say, on this issue. I really like what you said. This is really affecting our relationships.
It absolutely is.
It's really affecting our friendships. It's really affecting our families. I've seen several people on social media, tweet out that, hey, today I lost my family members, but I'm glad I have you guys on social media who, support me in this one cause. And it's just mind-blowing to hear that. It's like,
it is.
What?
It really is.
These are people that you've had deep connections with your whole life, and over a mask and over just a couple of people's opinions, it's ludicrous in a lot of ways.
It's tremendous. So I must say that when I look at it, I say it's really not about the mask. It's not about social distancing. It's about social conditioning the general public to try, because it started in March, and then this, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. It just makes you wonder, so what's up next? Because they're social conditioning us to see, okay, can they do this? Can they do this?
Absolutely, and it's like reprogramming us, right? Like just
absolutely.
Isolate us for a while, break all those habits, and then rebuild new habits that support, obviously, an agenda. Actually, let me ask you that. Who do you think is behind this, I guess, the government rollout of the lockdown? Who do you think is behind what the government is declaring us to do right now?
I mean, you look at it and it is worldwide. So that's tremendous that it's worldwide. It affects every country. Well, there's a few that have opted out, but basically worldwide. So we know automatically that it comes from higher. It's not our premier, it's not our prime minister. It's higher. It's higher. You go because our premier, our prime minister doesn't have a say in the whole world. So we have to follow that up, and we see that it comes from higher, and it definitely does. And it's nothing new. It's nothing new. We look in the past. Those high up people there, they can maneuver the whole thing, and it's sad. It's very, very sad that it is that way. But they change the world in a direction almost the way they want it. And I know we are glad that we are not in literal slavery. But if you look at it, this is nothing less than slavery. And as long as the people comply and stay on their knees, these high up people will play their game on our backs. And that's why I'm saying to the people is, let's get up. If we get up, their game is over. But people are so afraid, and guess what they're using to drive this whole thing worldwide is the fear-mongering method, the fear-mongering. I mean, to tell your little children, don't go visit grandma because you might kill grandma. That is criminal. That is awful.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is, and it is. It's really an inversion. The higher ups, as you speak, whether they're the Illuminati, the Illumin ones, the elites, the cabal, all these things, they invert the truth.
Right.
They invert the truth, and it's hard for people maybe who don't have that knowledge to see that, because it sounds kind of crazy to them. Like, what are you talking about? That's crazy, but that's what they do. They take what's pure and what's the truth and God's laws, and they invert them. I mean, like changing the Bible and all kinds of things.
Right.
So, yeah, it is sad that we live under their agenda. But as you say, if we all just said no, if we all today said, I'm just going outside, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm not doing this, I'm visiting my family. If everybody did that, that'd be the end.
It'd be the end of it. But they drive this point. and they socially condition the people further and further and further. And that's why they get this far.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. So I guess, Pastor Hildebrandt, what suggestions do you have maybe for people, all of us going through this time, let's say that might be going through some of those things that you just mentioned, these tensions in the family, who might not have a local church to go to. Any suggestions for these folks?
So, of course, as you can imagine, for a pastor, this has been horrible. The last few months, to see people suffering, it breaks your heart, and that's what drives me to. That's what pushes me to go to any protest, any rally, even though I have no association with the people that organize it or don't know them. But anybody standing up right now, because I know the voices that are crying and weeping and hurting, and starvation is because we have missionaries, we have connections with the poor countries, and starvation is like, they're calling me and they're saying, Pastor, the virus is not a problem in our country. We can't get no food. We can get no food. So it's extremely difficult, and that is what takes my fear away. That's what takes my fear away, that I'm saying, you know what? Put me in jail, kill me, do whatever you want. But I will stand up, I will cry aloud, I will spare not. I will let them know, look, what you are doing is not right, because look, you all are making money and these people are starving. Something is very, very wrong with this picture. And yes, you say you have our best in mind. I'm sorry, you don't, because if you had our best in mind, you wouldn't have done this for 8 months already. You said it was 2 weeks, and now look, it's going on 8 months or whatever it is. You are hurting the world population, and you're creating this global panic, and the people don't know, and many of them don't have a pastor. And that's why we have remained having our drive-in services, and we're inviting everyone. I said, doesn't matter what your background, doesn't matter what your color, doesn't matter what your language, come on over. I speak 4 different languages. I'll make sure that I speak one that you can understand me. So people come, and I'll just tell you this. Our particular congregation that I'm leading, by the help of the Lord, has not suffered as what the rest of the world has suffered during this time. I've made sure of that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, you've kept doors open, you've done whatever you can do, and you've had gatherings and all sorts of things. And I've seen some of those online, and your congregation looks happy. They have each other, they have your back, they have God's back. And
yes.
I hear you. I mean, the consequences the world is suffering right now far, far outweigh the virus. Far. So it seems obvious to see that, but I know some people are very, very entrenched in the other narrative, and it's hard for them to see. Hopefully hearing you speak, things like this will, just spark something in them to think about this logically. We need to be warriors right now. We need to be fighters right now, more than ever in history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not children of God that sit back. We're children of God that fight. We're warriors of Christ.
That's
yes,
right.
Absolutely. Sorry, I think you were going to say something, and I was on a roll.
Oh, that's fine. Sorry about that. I was just going to say, if we really thought that these lockdown measures were the cure to prevent coronavirus, then look what the cure is causing, and we have now caused a problem. So now the cure, the so-called, the quote cure, is way worse than the problem. So something went very, very wrong. And I really think it comes down to that even the high up people realized that it was a big mistake. But like one doctor was telling me recently, he said, Pastor, there's 3 words that are very difficult for high up people to say, and that is, I am sorry. And I think if they could just recognize and see, you know what, we miscalculated, this is wrong, let's just say it. If you made a mistake, let's just say it so we can get back. Otherwise, we're killing children, we're killing our elderly, our neglected, and our education system is a mockery. Look, we have made a mess of this. Can we just say, I am sorry, we went the wrong way, and let's just back up, because the facts, their own data is not backing up what they're saying. And right now, people cannot trust the government anymore. And they say, well, it's fatigue. It's fatigue. Well, it is serious fatigue, because what that fatigue is right now is people are distrusting our government because they have lied to us. It's not what they told us what it would be. They said millions of people would die, millions of people would die, thousands of people. Alberta would have 130,000 people dead. None of it is matching. None of it is matching. Their own data is not matching. So look what you're doing by this. Look what you're causing.
Yes, yes. Do you think, after having said what you said, that they have the authority to say I'm sorry, or do you think that they're also being threatened with their positions in their jobs to continue to roll this out the way they are?
I think they absolutely have tremendous pressure on their backs. They have to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going, regardless if they understand it or not. But Elle, that's why you see a police officer in Quebec, police officer in Alberta, police officer in Toronto. You see MPPs stepping out. You see mayors of cities stepping out and saying, look, could we see some data? Could we see some documents to prove this? Because we're hurting people. We are shutting down all these mom and pop shops that were hard earned. Like, we need some more. I'm saying there is tremendous pressure on their backs. I understand. But you know what I'm counting on, Elle, is that more and more people will step up and say, regardless of my position, regardless of my salary, enough is enough. We're standing up for our God-given freedom. We are not going along. And you know what? Historically proven, it doesn't take the majority to change something. They said, I read recently a very encouraging thing. It said if 3.5% of the population, or they said 3.5% of the population stands up, it has never failed to make a drastic change, a radical change. And as a Christian, as a pastor, I'm saying, you know, all it takes is one man with God is a majority. So
Yeah.
I'm saying Daniel changed it, Elijah changed it, others changed it, so can we. But I'm saying I will do what it takes on my part, and I'm going to help that others see that, and then we can change it. By God's grace, we can change it. And I know that I personally changed it for my congregation, and I know other pastors can do the same.
I love that. 100%. It's 100%. We can't wait for, oh, no, everybody else isn't going to do this, or I'm just one person. We can't wait for that. And if we're being true Christians, then we need to be true Christians.
That's right.
It can't be like half Christian. And
right.
You know, I know there's so much pressure for people to feel like they fit in. I know this personally because I go places without a mask, and I can tell you that I'm the only person. And
right.
I'm the only person, and it's not because I don't care about other people, but of course, you know, you feel that judgment on you.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, Pastor Hildebrandt, I have to sit in my car before I go in the supermarket, and I have to say, I am a sovereign being of God. I have the right to life and breath, and it tops all. And then I just put my shield on, which is just an invisible shield. Look straight ahead.
Yes,
and shop. And it's not fun.
It is not fun.
I feel true to, you know, what I'm professing, that I believe in. I feel true to it, and I come out feeling stronger. I might not like going in, but I come out and I breathe and I go, wow, I've chosen this. And you can choose that too. Because people often say, no, that's not a choice. You can't go into the supermarket and it is a choice. It's just you're not making that choice. It's hard to make that choice. I get it because I do it. The masks are put out as a strong recommendation, and mandatory masks means strongly recommended. But, and at the same time, probably a better word to use, because we are good people, you know, we tend to do what we're told. And so for people who are really believing that, they think, okay, it's mandatory, so we have to wear it. Legally, illegal in itself is probably illegal. But we don't have to, we're choosing to. And that's something I think people don't realize.
That's right.
Choose. And I've gone to many stores and I say, I have a religious exemption. And no one's ever asked me what that means, and I don't know if they'd understand. I said what it means. However, they just look a little baffled and go, oh, okay, and that's that. Because they know that there's exemptions, there's medical exemptions, there's cognitive disability exemptions, you don't even have to say what the exemption is actually.
Right.
So if you just think, well, I'm just being logical and that's an exemption, that could be your exemption.
Exactly. And if my argument also is, if the mask was as powerful as they make it sound, then why the person that has the mask on, why are they concerned if I don't have one on? If theirs works,
Yes.
you know what I mean? If their mask works, then so why are you worried if I don't have mine on? Because if yours works, anyway, just the whole arguments are so weak. They're so weak, and like you said, by law, they cannot ask you what is your exemption. They cannot ask. But that's the sad thing, is that they have made this. They brought this in as if you have to. You have to. If not, you are a terrible person. If you don't, and I mean, you almost feel like it. I mean, it's like, okay, look, I'm just being normal, but they are making, and by now in the supermarkets, it's not even so much just the owners of the stores, because some of them believe the same as you and I do. But now it's the people, the clients that come in, the people that shop, that are attacking their comrades, that are attacking their other people that are coming to shop, you know.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, you know, for anyone who's listening, just know your rights. And, you know, one suggestion is to just get, you know, align with yourself, what you believe in and what's true, and you put out to the world, and that's your reality. It's your reality. So if I could just say that. So my other question for you, a couple more questions, because I know we're just getting close to the end here of your time. So what I was going to say to you, do you know of any steps that are being taken to end this oppression of freedom and rights, like, I don't know, possibly legal?
So there is quite a bit going on with the different, like there's Christian lawyers, justice centers that are working with that, with their lawyers, that they realize, the lawyers know that this is very, very wrong, and they are suing the governments, various levels of governments. So there's definitely steps taken that way. In my view, the strongest thing of all is as people step up and take their liberty, whether it's in protest. And when I say protest, I'm not talking about hurting anyone. I'm not talking about swearing at anyone. I'm saying just stand up and march down the streets, stand up for your freedom in a peaceful way. But we need to do that. We need to do that because it's our right. It's our right. And I see it's our responsibility to do that. So my burden is, I want to encourage as many people as possible, stand up, stand up. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just stand up fearlessly, stand up. Here I stand, like Martin Luther said in his words. I like his words. He says, here I stand, I can do no other, so help me God.
Love it. Fantastic. And you know, sometimes it's hard for people to realize that no matter what happens to them, when they've stood up for something they really believe in, it's the greatest purpose that they have. And because I know people are afraid, if I do this, if I do that, if it happens, at the end of the day, you stood up for what you thought was right. And there's no higher purpose than that.
Yes.
So,
and I also say that, I say that somebody asked me, so you think you all can win? I said, let me tell you something. I said, it's not about winning or losing. It's about standing up and telling the truth.
100%, 100%. And isn't it interesting that as people stand up and tell the truth, that is where the censorship is coming in.
Right.
Even that alone is kind of that to me is a red flag. So if you're standing up for truth, that's what gets censored. Or if you're involved in a peace movement, that's somehow not a good thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely, you know, there's a lot of irrationality around this. There's a lot of confusion, and you know, I know people say, I don't know what to believe anymore. I get it. I mean, I question things that I didn't question before. But one thing I can say is I do really love reading the Bible, and I love the fact that when you kind of get in touch with God's laws, That's what it is.
Yes.
There's no more confusion.
No more
Anything that
confusion.
goes against that, you already know is out of line,
Right.
out of alignment, I guess, with our true nature, with our
Exactly.
divinity.
Exactly. I think what also really hurts the population is the hypocrisy. Like
For sure.
again and again and again, like just now lately, just where an MPP is with his family, like 40 of them, not wearing a mask. And of course, we like that. We said that's the way it should be. But the problem is that they turn right around and would give us a ticket and bring us before the court if they could for having done exact same thing as they did. And that's very hard on the population is when they see that our leaders are being hypocrites. And of course, as a pastor, that's where the Bible comes in, where I'm saying if Jesus saw that, he would tell them, thou hypocrite, why are you doing this? Telling the people this and doing the exact same thing as you're telling them not to do.
100%, absolutely. So, Pastor Hildebrandt, we're coming to the close of this interview, and I just wonder if you have any final words that you want to say to whoever's listening right now, in whatever direction you want, whether it's encouragement, whether it's about your church, anything that you would like to say in closing around what we're talking about here today.
Al, I would like to say thank you to everyone that has prayed for me, everyone that has sent me a message. It means far more. I don't have the time. I'm not able to respond to everyone, but it has meant so much to me. It gives me the strength. I have told many people, I said, you know why I have been able to do what I'm doing? Because of you all. You all are like a cloud of witnesses. It's standing behind me, standing with me. And I am not afraid because I know that God is on my side. What can man do unto me? And they have threatened with fines. They have said this, they have said that. I said, if my faith is not worth dying for, my faith is not worth living for. And I am passionate. It comes from my heart to the hearts of the people. And I love the people. I love the people. I'll give my life for the people by the grace of God. But I mean it, that we will stand strong, whatever it takes. And of course, I will wash my hands often. Of course, I will cough into my elbow. I will be as careful as I can. Of course, if any of our parishioners is not well, I tell them, don't mix in with the people, do the isolation, of course. But to do what is happening right now is very, very wrong. And it is against God, and God is taking note of it.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Pastor Hildebrandt, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate your courage and your bravery, and the wise words that you shared with us today has really, really been helpful. And I know that our audience is going to get a lot out of this. And I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for your genuineness and for sharing your heart today with absolutely great, fantastic.
Al, you are very, very welcome, and thank you so very much for having me. This was an opportunity for me to pour out my heart to the population. I just want to tell them, don't give up, keep on praying, God will help us.
Awesome. 100%. God bless.
God bless you as well.
Thank you so much.